Today, we sit down with Democratic Congresswoman Angie Craig, representing the 2nd District in Minnesota. She is pro-gun, she is pro-choice, she is pro-education, but most importantly, she's pro-union. Today, we're going to get into a lot of discussions. We're going to get into a lot of debates. Let's get into it. I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. It's a full contact sport.
We're going to find out who has a better bad idea. So, you are a congresswoman from the great state of Minnesota. Recently,
the best.
Second best. Recently announced your run for this going to be soon to vacated Senate seat. You've had a pretty good career in politics for a short time in Congress, done a lot of great work. Is this a better bad idea to run for Senate? Because you're pretty safe where you're at.
Well, they're all bad ideas and, sometimes bad jobs in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
So,
speaking of that, you have to deal with a lot. I
do.
Your state's very important to this country. Who are going to be your opponents? I think Minnesota was pretty well prevalent in the last presidential election. Who are your opponents?
Well, so far in the race, we've got 2 other women. And look, I don't think of them as my opponents. The amazing thing on the Democratic side is you've got 3 women who have been successful in their own right. But, I've been in the Congress. I've been doing the work, fighting on behalf of working folks across our country. And, I know I can beat any Republican who they put across from me. $90 million they've spent over the last 5 elections trying to beat me. And the truth is I keep winning by more. And part of that's because you guys have been with me from the start.
Yeah, organized labor, there's no doubt. I think we've proven we're pretty influential in elections. But who are your opponents on the Democratic side?
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan is in the race. Former Senator Melissa Franson, they're both in the race. And they were in there a little bit quicker than I was. Governor Walz took a little bit of time to figure out if he was going to run for the Senate or run for re-election for governor. He passed up on the Senate. And I announced, recently. Because,
you were announced 10 minutes ago, right?
Yeah,
No, it's perfect.
I'm going to say it's 10 minutes ago forever. So it's
Absolutely.
Right now. We need support right now.
So what is the difference? What do you think the difference is going to be running a senatorial campaign versus a congressional campaign?
A lot more money. The sad part is it takes $40, $50, $60 million to win these Senate races. And that's a small number anymore.
That's a big ask too.
It's a huge number, right?
Right.
And I think that's part of what's wrong with politics today is you've now got hundreds of millions of dollars that, come into it. And, the art of organizing is still there in Minnesota, having labor go to their members and talk on your behalf. It really still matters. But, it's going to be a big Senate race from a dollar perspective. And, we've got the machine. We've run the races. We know how to win.
So 2016, you made a run for the seat you currently have right now, and you were defeated. And what did you learn from that defeat? Because look, we don't win every battle, right? And I think what's important is to assess what the shortfalls were. When you came back in 2018 to run, what did you learn from 2016 versus 2018? Because you say you won the 2019 election handily against the same opponent. What was the difference?
You know what? The difference was that first race, I'd never run for anything. I was a political newcomer, and I wasn't fully me. You know what? I let the consultants and the Washington types try to make me out to be somebody that I'm not. And, this is what you need to dress like and look like.
What made you want to be in politics?
Oh, Jesus.
That's a bad idea, too.
And it was a terrible idea, wasn't it? Here's the truth. Grew up, single mom, mobile home park. I was 18 years old when I left the mobile home. And my mom was, somebody who was just damn determined. She went to college at night, junior college class, community college class. And my grandmother was a couple doors down, helped raise us. I looked up at 40. This was my midlife crisis, running for politics. It was a hell of a midlife crisis. But I'd been pretty damn lucky. My wife and I, we wouldn't be enough for some people, but we felt like we had plenty of good fortune. And I said, what the hell? Like,
And
working folks,
you were the first openly gay woman
it's weird.
To win.
Yeah.
And I mean,
and it's a Republican district.
right.
It was a R+2 district when I won it. And,
What was that like running? Was there scrutiny because of your...
I mean, look, I talked about the issues people care about in their lives.
Right.
How do you put more money in their pockets? How do you create jobs in our local communities? How do you lower the cost of healthcare by taking on the cost of drugs like
All right,
insulin?
So on
That's
that note, right, you were saying
Yeah.
putting money in people's pockets,
Yeah.
making sure that they're taking care of food
Yeah.
on the table and everything else. Would you agree that during this last election, that wasn't the Democratic focus?
And look, my hair was literally on fire this whole last election because we lost our way. My campaign was focused on this, and I outperformed the top of the ticket 8 or 9 points. I talked about how I'm taking on big pharma to lower the cost of prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about, it's funny because President Trump has this idea that we're going to stop taxing seniors on their Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
I got a bill that would do that. Now, it's not the same bill the way that he would do it, and we actually raised the money to pay for it in mind. But thinking about this from an economic lens has always been the way that I've thought about it. And back to your point about my identity, the fact that I have a wife and I have 4 sons and 3 grandsons now, like that's how I talk about it. Like just like any other politician or person would. You talk about your wife and your kids. That's how I talk about it. And that's how people figure out, oh, hey, wait, she's a lesbian. I don't make a big deal out of it, but at the end of the day, I talk about what people care about, and that's what people want.
Well, I think that's where the Democrats lost their way. I'm a lifelong Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Massachusetts is a very strong Democrat. I always refer to my mother as a Kennedy Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
And it was amazing to see the transformation over the last 10 to 15 years of what the Democratic Party that I was brought up
Mm-hmm.
with and where they're at now. You're coming from Arkansas, big Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
He was
all
the
Democrats.
governor, all Democrats. So did you always identify as a Democrat, or were you apolitical at one point in time, or what was it?
My Republican colleagues from Arkansas, they tell me that an Arkansas Democrat had to move all the way to Minnesota to get elected.
Right.
In today's day and time. I don't know. I mean, my mom was a teacher, and she actually was pissed off at Clinton during my childhood. I remember she was mad about a teacher testing law.
Mm-hmm.
She was a damn teacher and had gone to school for 9 years to become one at night, raised 3 kids, and now they wanted to test her level of competency. And she was mad at him, and so she'd been a budding country music star when she was younger.
Your mother was?
Yeah.
No kidding.
And so she was on the Porter Wagner show and all this stuff. And so she wrote a song. It was called The Teacher Test. And it got played all over the radio.
Can you belt out
protesting.
a few lyrics for us?
Oh, my God. I probably could, but please don't.
That'd be
make me.
interesting.
Oh, my
That'd be
God. Don't make me do it.
No?
But anyway, my family wasn't that political. They really weren't. I always leaned toward, for sure, I was a Democrat. I think when you're growing up in the South and, you realize you like girls when you're a teenager, and you're
we
like,
have that
oh,
in common.
yeah. See,
I liked girls when I was a teenager,
we have so
too.
much in common
Absolutely,
already.
yeah.
That's amazing.
No, but I mean, it had to be tough growing up in the South.
It was.
And if you don't mind, I think our audience would love to know, when did you come out?
Well, I came out to my parents in my mid-20s,
Mm-hmm.
but I was coming out to girlfriends before that.
Right.
But that was it. That's
Well, you really couldn't come out back then,
I mean,
right?
in the South.
But
it
that's
was
not what
hard.
identifies you
It's not.
as a politician.
But it's not. But I tell you what, growing up there, understanding people's deeply held religious beliefs, kind of in that conservative Christian culture, in my own district and in Minnesota, I think I give people more grace. I mean, I'll go into churches throughout Minnesota, and I know they may be suspicious of me when I walk through the door. But back to your point about being a Democrat, we got to go in spaces where we're going to hear from people who don't agree with everything.
No, and I think what's important and what we've been able to witness through your term is that you just don't toe a party line. Like you toe a line that's in the best interest of your constituents. And when there's the ability to find common ground to work bipartisan, you've done that. And what has been the secret sauce, or what has been your guiding light through that? Clearly not the consultants, but maybe it's a moral compass that you possess. What is that?
You know what? I think it begins and ends with actually getting out of your bubble. Mm-hmm. Talking to people in spaces and places where not everybody's going to agree with you. I go down to the southern part of my district and talk to rural communities.
Rural communities that are red, correct?
Yeah. Red community, people who I know are, card-carrying Republicans, and have a respectful conversation. And, A, we don't do that enough, but B, when we have those conversations, sometimes we're not respectful about it.
What is it like working in Congress right now?
Oh, God. Well, look, it's kind of a shit show, to be perfectly honest with you. It's, I worked with President Trump a lot in my first term when he was president before.
2000.
Yeah, I was there the last 2 years.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I worked with him on legislation. He signed 4 of my bills into law, and he signed more than Biden signed into law. So I've been willing to work with the president. I voted against Biden when I thought it was right for my district. And with Trump, right now I think he's getting a lot of it wrong, just to be honest with you. He's this stop-start, let's freeze,
couldn't we say that about the previous administration as well? I mean, it's been 100 days, right? And you can probably make a more qualified opinion of the first 100 days, but running the biggest country, one of the biggest countries in the world, there are going to be shortfalls. There are going to be trials, tribulations. Do you see it getting any better?
But don't you think that, you come in, you run in the Teamsters, the youngest guy in the history of the organization. Like, don't you actually hire people who would take a hot minute to figure out what people do before you just start firing them?
This episode is brought to you by Catches Law Group, proud advocates for injured workers and their families since 1986. If you've been hurt on the job, navigating the workers' comp system can feel like fighting an uphill battle. That's where Catches Law comes in. They've recovered over $3 billion for hardworking people just like you, and they don't back down when your rights are on the line. They know what it means to stand shoulder to shoulder with unions and workers across the country. Because at Catches Law, it's not just about compensation, it's about justice. Learn more at catcheslaw.com. That's KECHES law.com. I've worked hand in hand with Catches Law Group. I've seen what they've done on behalf of working men and women who are injured at work, men and women who give their lives to an employer who, once you're injured, wants to throw you away. When Catches Law Group is representing you, they make certain that they start and finish strong. I can tell you right now that there is no better law firm at all to represent injured workers throughout this country. That's catcheslaw.com, KECHES law.com.
Well, I think there's been a lot of criticism on coming in abrupt. But again, if we look back at other presidents, whether it was Clinton, it was Obama, even Biden, we want smaller government. We want efficient government.
100%.
And no one was able to get that done. There's been a lot of debate. Look, I don't want to see anybody losing their jobs. That's not what I do for a living. I'm out there every day trying to fight for jobs, right? But there's been a lot of debate about how he has come in his first 100 days, and there's been a lot of criticism. But there's also been a lot of support about smaller government, more efficient government. And I think where the criticism is, to your point, is that there could have been maybe a different tact to get it done. But then you have people on the other side saying, hey, sometimes you got to come in and do some bold moves to rebuild it. Do you see that being able to be salvaged and rebuild a smaller, more efficient government? Or is this going to be the way it is 100 days into the next 4 years or 3.5 years?
Look, I'm going to be honest. You bring a billionaire in to kind of just across the board cut people without knowing whatever they do. And I mean, I could give you 10 examples of areas where I think, they just didn't, look before they cut. Mm-hmm. What is it? Measure twice, cut once. And look, if that's how they want to run the government, it is going to be chaotic. But to your point, nobody wants status quo in Washington right now. That's not what my constituents want. That's not the people who voted for me and voted for Trump. They want change in Washington. There's no doubt.
I think it's reflective just in our organization as well. When we polled our members, mm-hmm. It was, eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And when you see a working class organization mm-hmm. like ours supporting Republicans, the Democrats have to take a step back and go, all right, something's not mm-hmm. working. And I was hopeful. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest with you. I was optimistically hopeful after this election that would happen. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be everybody's pointing fingers. And instead of saying, all right, look, we don't like what you did over here. Mm-hmm. Can we get together and figure out how we mitigate these damages? Mm-hmm. We understand what's trying to be done here in this mm-hmm. country. Do we have a leader that has that ability in the Democratic Party, or do we need a new leader in the Democratic Party to try and broker those deals and try and broker those, or is it just?
I don't think it's unusual after, Republicans take the town and you've got the White House, the House, and the Senate for the party out of power to struggle for a little bit.
Do you think that's a little political retribution or what?
Look, if we didn't get the message when Donald Trump won the national election that some of our policies and messages are out of touch with the American people, we're not listening. And that goes back to my point. Why did I outperform the top of the ticket by 8.5 points? Why did Pat Ryan in New York outperform by 9 or 10?
And why do you keep gaining momentum with Trump voters and Trump supporters?
Well, look, because I think Washington is a shit show, that it's broken. And I don't think we need to burn it down, though. If they come in and they said, okay, we're going to look for waste, fraud, and abuse, or we're going to look for redundancies in jobs, or things we just shouldn't be doing. But we have 3 branches of government for a reason. You can't just go in and cut programs that Democrats and Republicans have hard-fought negotiated. That is going to destroy our country.
What are some of those programs off the top of your head that, have been negotiated in good faith, bipartisan? What are some of those programs that have been undone over the last 100 days?
Well, look, I'll give you a couple from the ag community, which I'm the ranking member of the ag committee on the House side. It's those
and that's a pretty influential committee.
I came back from the last election pissed off because I thought Democrats should be in the majority, and we had a couple folks running who have been in line for a long time to be the next chair, and I wasn't much interested in standing in line anymore, just because I think we can win back the hearts and minds of rural communities across our country. And I made the case to my colleagues that I was the best person to lead that committee. But when you think about those programs, I'd start with the food bank programs, the farm to food programs. You got family farmers out there who are growing homegrown American food. It's going to our local food banks. It's going to our local schools to help supplement all of that activity. And Congress approved the program. We put it in a budget bill. President Biden signed it into law, and Elon Musk identified this as waste. Well, okay, you might think so, but I can promise you we were in rooms bitching and moaning about each other's priorities for months to get to that final bill. That's how it works. The legislative process in America, it's not supposed to be easy. it's supposed to force compromise.
So first 100 days in President Biden's administration, he made it clear that he was going to shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Okay. That was 7,500 jobs to the Teamsters.
Yeah.
And not a word was said about it.
Yeah.
No one made a big deal. The Democrats didn't push back on that.
Yeah.
But I had 7,500 members that didn't know what was going to happen. And not a word was said about it.
Yeah.
And I know that, mining is very important, especially where you come from, Minnesota. What is your position on natural gas, on pipelines, on stuff like that? Because that was cut right out with the Democrats, and not a word was said about it.
Well,
no one wanted to march in the streets over those 7,500 jobs. Those are Teamster jobs. There's probably another 17,000 that were lost as a result of it.
I'll give you a couple examples. The pipelines that were being built in Minnesota, in my district, were carrying oil that otherwise would be on trains traveling throughout the towns in my district. Or trucks. And so my position has always been that that oil is safer in the ground than it is on a train or a truck traveling through my towns. Those are real jobs. I'll give you another example. I told you about my ag committee responsibilities. Secretary Vilsack in the Biden administration called me the biofuels bulldog because I think, I'm an all of the above energy Democrat. I think biofuels should be part of the mix. Sure, electric vehicles are great, but in Minnesota,
But we don't have the infrastructure to support.
Correct.
We don't have the infrastructure to support that initiative that was put into effect. And where are we at with that?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. Is Minnesotans, for example, wouldn't fully buy into it because who wants to be 40 below driving just an electric vehicle? And so, this liquid fuel that contains ethanol that is produced from corn grown from the ground by Minnesota farmers. You can
capture that ethanol.
Correct. Well, you capture the carbon emissions.
Right.
And so that becomes, a green program. I don't want to call it that. I think that might be a banned word right now in America. But, pipelines to be able to capture the carbon and get it to safe storage somewhere, it's a huge opportunity for your members, projects like that.
Speaking of green programs, federal legalization of marijuana.
Ooh, green.
I mean, I know you've probably never done it.
I plead the fifth.
Okay, fair enough.
It's legal in Minnesota.
Oh, here we go.
Totally legal in Minnesota, man. We are totally legal.
There we go.
We can, there are now grow laws. No, it's a huge budding sector in Minnesota.
So do you know how many W-2 employees are employed currently right now in the cannabis industry nationwide? Take a guess.
I don't know. I don't know.
Over 450,000.
Oh my God.
Between cultivation, warehousing, and soon to be hopefully transportation. Where do you stand on the national legalization of cannabis?
Yeah, I've always supported legalizing cannabis,
Safe banking laws as
declassifying
well.
it.
Because
I've voted for the SAFE Act 3 times already in my career here.
So that's important because I think it's going to give a lot of opportunity. But where does the administration stand on cannabis? I mean, there's been early indications that they are going to embrace and legalize marijuana. Your state, I think, was pretty proactive.
Yeah.
But I think there was some controversy as far as the legislation went that caused some issues getting it off the ground.
It's been slower to get off the ground, but I think it's accelerating. I was on a ski trip with a neighbor of mine recently, and he's a consultant working with a grow operation in Minnesota. And so, I think this is going to blow up in Minnesota. We are, the fastest growing sector of our, I guess I'm going to call our alcohol industry, our liquor store industry is THC infused drinks.
Right.
It's huge.
Less people once marijuana was legalized in certain states, consumption was going down.
Right.
But that's a great opportunity for a career path for people to create an industry. And that's what we're trying to do. But it's also going to supplement the loss of jobs as a result of the less consumption of alcohol, where you're going to see a lot of these, we do see a lot of these distributors that we deal with nationwide trying to position themselves to be able to distribute this in the States, similar to how we do alcohol. And the point is, as a representative in the Senate or in the Congress, isn't that what you're supposed to be doing? Fighting to create jobs, good middle-class jobs?
Look, the middle class has been screwed since my entire life. Like, I'm thinking back to, some of the 1980s. We lived in a trailer in the middle of Arkansas. None of it was falling down to us, the
Right.
trickle-down economics. And, I keep thinking about labor in our country and the fact that for years and years and years, it's been in decline. We should be 80% of everything I do ought to be directed at creating the conditions for which jobs can be created in this country.
So there's been a bold position taken on tariffs. It's been the subject of every single conversation. Seems day to day it changes. And a lot of these deals that were made with these foreign countries were bad trade deals, which I think we all can recognize. And again, a real bold stance on what those tariffs are going to be and going to look like. But if you actually look at the tariffs sitting in your seat, would you agree or disagree that for the last 20 years, a lot of these arrangements we've had with other countries, it's not fair and equitable back to the U.S.? Would you agree with that or no?
I would agree that the free trade system we've created isn't a fair trade system and that we have been abused by many countries. I'd also say that, what the administration's currently doing, simply the across-the-board tariffs, doesn't really recognize, man, you can't adjust these supply chains overnight. You just can't. Like, they're global.
Right, but think
point.
about this, though. You look at it during the pandemic. And we had all of our members that were deemed essential workers because we provide goods and services to this country.
Yep.
That was during the end of the Trump administration, coming into the Biden administration. I know one thing was clear. We had to wait for a lot of products in this country because we allowed them to go to other countries to be manufactured. And we couldn't get them because the supply chain was so difficult through COVID. Shouldn't that have been a wake-up call at that point in time? To say we need to start manufacturing more goods and services that are produced overseas. We had almost the most difficult times in our lives where we needed pertinent commodities, and we couldn't get them because we gave away a trade deal that allowed for people to make products in other countries, and we hurt the middle class. Wouldn't that have been a wake-up call to start saying we need to create and manufacture in this country?
It really should have been on these areas where there's national security risk, you would think. Like, I think about pharmaceutical companies.
They must
drugs.
love you, huh?
Yeah, who?
Big Pharma?
No, they don't love me.
They won't be. You think they'll be contributing to the campaign?
No, no, because I think candidly, I don't take their money. One of the reasons why I don't take their money.
She does not take their money.
I do not take Big Pharma's money. I don't. One of the challenges we have with, frankly, is our patent laws in this country. Pharma has locked up their drugs forever, and the idea that you can come in and create competition against them in this country, it's almost impossible. They make a tiny little change the color of the pill, and all of a sudden they extend the life of the patent. I remember this last USMCA that President Trump and Robert Lighthizer were negotiating. And this was a real big sticking point for me. They wanted to change they wanted to change the laws in Canada and Mexico to match the U.S. law, which was make the patent life longer for these drugs to protect their position and have no competition longer. And so some of that, national security issues. We had food security issues in our country at the time too. Do you know almost all meat processors in America are owned today by foreign countries, foreign entities in America? And literally in Minnesota, we were shooting our hogs because they couldn't be processed. I wasn't, but farmers were, pig producers. So,
and what were they doing with them?
They were just killing them because they couldn't be processed into bacon.
Because we have an obligation under a bad arrangement with a foreign country that we can't prosper off the goods and services.
Well, we
just
didn't have enough.
Here.
We didn't have enough capacity, and there's not enough competition in this country. Locally owned processed entities.
But can't we invest in that in this country? And
Absolutely
how would we
can.
do that?
I mean, farmer co-ops. How do we reward farmers for coming together to develop and go into business and make more meat processing?
So you look at China, right, for instance, and I saw something today. The guy on Shark Tank came out and said that China should be taxed 400% on everything. Now, I have a problem with China, and I support American jobs. Mm-hmm. We have a company, United Airlines, right now that we're trying to get before a hearing in Washington, D.C., because they are subcontracting all the work, mechanical work, over to China with all their planes.
Yep.
And we have 10,000 union members, Teamsters, that work, that keep those planes in the air. Wouldn't a tariff or a strict tariff on the company, or maybe these companies that are allowing or sending their work over there, why are we not looking at that and saying, hey, United Airlines, you're a U.S. company. If you want to send your work over to China, instead of keeping people working here where we have the infrastructure, you should pay a fine. Right. You should pay a tariff.
I think strategic tariffs are great. I mean, China's one of the worst actors out there. I mean, they're not our friend. And, when I worked in the medtech industry, in the sector, China sent Chinese national into our business, stole pacemaker prints. We made implantable defibrillators and pacemakers, took them back to China and formed a coalition company with the government and knocked off our products. Like, China's not a good actor. That would be a great tariff,
but you have to admit,
had they been strategic.
You have to admit, if you look back over the last 20 years, I just watched an interview that our current President Trump did with, I believe, Oprah Winfrey. He was complaining about China 25 years ago. So he's not 100% wrong on a lot of these positions he's taken, right?
He's not. And I think that's one thing that is, as Democrats, we have to be careful of, is what I would say, is if you take the opposite position every time the administration acts, you lose the ability to reach back and win the people who he won the national election with. It's like, I was thinking about this. I was here in Washington several weekends ago. We've got 4 sons. So they're range in age from 22 to 27, and then 3 grandsons. And I don't do the Washington tourist thing very often, but my
I've been
son
in 3
was here.
years. I can't tell you.
One weekend in 6 years.
Yeah,
I did it. It's crazy. We were at the Lincoln Memorial.
I think the only thing I've gone to last 3 years, maybe a couple times, is a Union pub. That's it. That was my sightseeing tour.
God,
there.
You are really well. At least it was a pub. At least you were drinking beer.
Perfect.
But
allegedly.
No, I was chasing my 2-year-old grandson around, and my son asked me, "Why is Lincoln's one hand closed in the statue and the other hand open?" I kind of feel like that's how I have to be right now.
Oh, you have to be guarded.
As a Democrat.
You have to be guarded.
It's like, look, I mean, where the policies go too far, where the administration is wrong, just like I did with any administration, I call it out when I disagree. But we got to keep our hand open too.
How much legislation is weaponized?
Oh my God. You can't, I mean, almost all of it, right? Like, so almost every vote we take is designed to be a gotcha vote from the majority. Like, and look, we do the same thing. Like, put the hardest vote possible so that you can message and run against your opponents the next election.
And the reason why I ask you this is because, one of our biggest issues has been since the Obama administration, we tried to get the Employee Free Choice Act passed.
Yeah.
Democratic House, Democratic Senate, Democratic President, couldn't get it done. And that was like a version of the PRO Act.
I know.
And then we have the PRO Act.
The PRO Act.
We have the PRO Act.
Yeah.
And no way that was going to pass in its form that it's in during the election cycle. And the Democrats wanted to put that out there just so the Republicans could say, no, we're not agreeing with that, and then make that an issue.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a political football.
Right.
So we are working
football.
bipartisan. We have been for the last 2.5 years.
I know you do.
With Cory Booker and also Josh Hawley on the FASTA labor standards contract.
Yeah.
And that's something that we are trying to get bipartisan support. Is that something you would embrace and support?
Absolutely. So, other people rank it, but I was in the top 3% of all bipartisan members of Congress in the last Congress. I voted against the Biden administration in 2023 about 30% of the time.
Right. And what was some of the issues you voted against?
Well, look, I think that, there's some agriculture-related activity that, I'm a big supporter of expanding ethanol production in our country. I think it's a renewable fuel that we should have greater access to. And so I would stand up to them on those things. Some tax laws about passing down the family farm, changing stepped-up basis. The truth is that the past administration, and I told them, look, I'm all for immigration reform, but we need to secure the border. Like, people in my district are looking at that and they're saying, even immigrants, I had to wait 7 years to come across into the country. People have got to get in line here and come across. I'm not someone who thinks you have to choose between immigrants and border security.
Yeah, but
you
if you
have
go back,
to do both.
And it's funny because we're talking about weaponizing and making issues.
And Republicans were weaponizing it.
Well, they were, but don't forget Hillary Clinton's 2008 immigration policy. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to it, I pulled it up in a recent podcast I did with Governor Cuomo. It sounds verbatim what Trump did this time around. I mean, he did a lot more aggressively, but I don't think anybody coming to this country from a foreign country with the intent of committing crimes and not being a good U.S. citizen.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's where the issue gets clouded because, look, we're all products of immigrants somehow, some way.
Absolutely.
And speaking of Washington, D.C., I've taken many cab rides, especially during the election and campaign. And, most of the cab drivers, and I try and always get in a cab. I'm not a big Uber, Lyft guy. But all of them are non-white. Mm-hmm. All of them are immigrants. And the majority of those folks were Trump supporters. And you know why? Because to your point, they came here. 7 years, 8 years to get here. They learned the language and they went through the naturalization process to get.
Yeah, but don't you think right now with as hard as they're going, I mean, I'm hearing back home, even from swing voters, some Republicans, this country's value is due process. Like, people should have a chance to take on and make sure that, we're not just deporting people without giving them due process.
I think there's been cases where, that should be supported. But I think there's also cases where in states like where I'm from, Massachusetts, you have people that came here strictly for criminal activity, sexually abusing children, raping women, and they're being walked out of court.
I think there's a lot of agreement that people who, are convicted, people who are violent offenders, of course, should be deported.
100%.
But, what the Trump administration is doing right now is a lot further than what they said they were going to do.
Right.
And most people also believe that people who've been here a long time and they've paid their taxes, they've worked hard, they've served in our nation's military, that we ought to give them a path to citizenship.
Anybody that's served in the military, right? I mean, I think
and dreamers,
tremendous respect for anybody, whether you're born in this country or you come over from another country, you serve the United States of America. Tremendous respect. Amazon.
Jeez, I know.
Speaking of a terrorist organization. Now that guy makes me laugh. Jeff, what's his middle name?
Preston.
Jeff Preston. Right? Just that middle name alone, Jeff Preston Bezos. Here's a company that's net worth is worth more than global economies all over this world. And it's funny, he comes out yesterday or today, and he's going to blame the tariffs, and he's going to note the tariffs that are on each product sold or distributed by Amazon.
Yeah, but didn't he cave within an hour?
Right, but you know what he should have done though? What he should do if he's like, if he's really truly wants to be transparent, he should put on what he makes per piece that's delivered. I mean, his net worth per piece would be interesting to the consumer to see that. And yeah, he folded like an accordion.
Everybody's folding.
It's crazy, but there's a company, right, that our government does business with.
Yeah.
I mean, they're an awful employer. They focus on distressed communities where they recycle 150% of their people in and out, and yet we don't do anything about them. Like, there's nothing being done in this country about them. I mean, we're fighting them. We're going to organize them. We're going to try and organize them, but there's no accountability, and they think there's no accountability. They think that they can do whatever they want because they're so wealthy. How would you help us fight, or how would you help working class Americans fight Amazon? I mean, they're a threat to everything.
Well, look, I mean, you should have the right to organize at Amazon.
Right.
And we need to have laws in this country that allow you to do that. I mean, you're right. Working folks in our country have been screwed over for decades. You guys have built the organization in an amazing way by creating jobs and by organizing. But, you know, one of the things I'm working on right now, and there's an interesting moment in time.
And Amazon has focused in on Minnesota.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, right now it's interesting. It's like, you know, we get into all these labels in Congress. Are you progressive? Are you centrist? Are you this? One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of overlap right now on is monopolies. You know, monopolies that are taking over our country, these big ass companies where billionaires are controlling everything. And progressive and you know, and I'm one of the founders of the Monopoly Busters Caucus. And Chris DeLuzio from Pennsylvania is part of it.
That sounds like a fun-ass time.
They're fun. Monopoly Busters. But, you know, if we don't take on big pharma, if we don't take on big tech, if we don't take these big industries on now, they're going to control our country.
Well,
and there's no competition.
Well, big tech's another one. I mean, big tech, you look at big tech, and, you know, the running mate of Vice President Harris in the most recent election, your governor, they were pointing fingers at all the billionaires on the Republican side, yet they were in bed with big tech.
Look, I don't answer for other people.
No, I know, but you witnessed it.
Well, look, big tech has done nothing but make us angrier and lonelier and sadder. And we've done nothing about it. I mean, this is one of my biggest deals in Congress is, you know, we can't even regulate big tech at all. One of the bills I've gotten, it's been another passion area for me, is to stop the flow of fentanyl coming across our southern border at the ports of entry.
That's important for the borders,
it's
right?
It's a really important topic. But Snapchat, for example, the big tech companies, today they allow the sale and distribution of fentanyl pills, fake pills, on their platforms, and law enforcement can't even get to the information about who's selling it.
Why can't they get to it?
Well, if you have porn on your site or you have child porn on your site, law enforcement can get to you. But if you're selling pills laced with fentanyl, law enforcement can't get you. The tech company has no responsibility to report to law enforcement the sale and distribution of these pills.
So, I mean, you look at that. If that's accurate, I don't have any reason not to believe
it's
you.
a bill.
But wouldn't they be supporting, or I mean, couldn't they be considered a cartel?
Well, there you
Criminal organization?
There you go.
Why isn't the DOJ going after big tech if that's
crazy.
What's going on?
It's crazy. I've got a kid in
I got a better bad idea.
That's a better bad idea. That's great. 19-year-old kid named Devin Noring from my district. During COVID, he thought he was buying a Percocet because he had a toothache. You couldn't go to the dentist. They're all closed down. Mm-hmm. He and a buddy, decide, this is a really good idea. We're going to buy a Percocet on Snapchat. Kid never woke up the next day. There's no responsibility for those tech companies. I mean, the algorithms.
Are we not going after them because we don't know how to go after them?
No, they have no responsibility to report.
Are we not going after them because they fund candidates? I mean, Gavin Newsom. We had a bipartisan bill in California, and I know you're a big supporter of not allowing autonomous vehicles.
Yep.
We had a bipartisan bill all set to be signed off on his desk, and he vetoes it. Now, here's a guy that we got him through the recall, organized labor, when I say we, and this is important to us. We want human operators in vehicles. We want human operators in commercial vehicles, and we want to protect the infrastructure that we all invest in through paying taxes. And this guy signs off, and know why he did? Because he's in bed with big tech. They finance his campaigns. They probably gave him a promise once he's done as the governor that he's going to have a big job, big paying job. I mean, it's corruptible. But why are they not being held accountable? Is it because they buy these politicians, or what is it?
You know, I think one of the biggest problems we have in America is campaign finance. Like, if we just ended Citizens United, the Supreme Court ruling that said corporations can spend unlimited amount of money in campaigns, that alone would solve a lot of the bipartisan issues that you're talking about. If we force states to fairly redistrict these districts, you wouldn't see D+30 and R+30 districts. And you know what you get? You get people who are coming here, I think, for the right reasons, and who actually want to serve their community. But without, the status quo today in America with campaign finance, with the people in this, I'll go off on a tangent here, stock trading by members of Congress. Do you know, I came in to this job having worked for a company for 12 years. I had some stock with the company. I sold it before I was sworn in, because it's incredible to me. I mean, on a daily basis, I'll turn to my chief and I'll say, oh, I just got insider information. Like, people just tell you shit when you're in Congress.
Well, it's funny because, there's a couple of Congress people now, one who's been very critical of me in New York because I didn't endorse Vice President Harris. There's been speculation. That person came in with a very, very minimal net worth, and now they're worth tens and 12s of millions of dollars. I mean, how does that happen?
I'm just telling you, members should not trade stocks.
Now, will you get better stock tips if you become a senator or a congressperson?
Oh my God. Senators shouldn't trade stocks either. Nobody here in this town should be allowed to trade individual stocks. That's crazy. On a daily basis, people tell me things that in meetings that they don't mean to give me a stock trade. It's just like, oh, well, that's about to happen in the economy. And if I traded stocks, you could go short all this shit. You should not be able to do it.
You could now.
Well, don't get me started.
So do you think the Republicans going to launch an aggressive campaign against you? Or do you think that because of your work, bipartisan, the state you're from, do you think there'll be a viable Republican candidate against you in the Senate?
We'll see. They didn't put a viable one against Klobuchar the last time.
Right.
She and I won by, let me make sure I give her credit. She won my district by more than I did. I only won by 14. She won by 15.
She's been very good with organized labor.
Yeah.
She's been great.
She's great.
So that won't be an issue, you working together in the Senate. How would you approach the Senate versus how you approached being a freshman Congress person coming in and trying to work bipartisan? I think there's a great opportunity here, and this is, again, an unqualified opinion, but I think there's a lot of Republicans that recognize working people won that election, and they've made a lot of promises to be the party for working people. Conversely, you have a lot of Democrats that are doing a lot of soul searching and saying, how do we find our way back? How are you going to approach, what's going to be your tact when you win the U.S. Senate race?
Look, I think the beauty of the Senate, and one thing that attracts me to serve there, do a lot of the work I do here there, is there's only 100 members. You actually get to develop deep, strong relationships.
Yeah, dealing with 400.
That's it. It's 435,
right?
Yeah.
435 different personalities, different issues, even people from the same state.
Yeah.
Have completely different
and I think
issues.
The other dynamic is when you're running every 2 years, and you're always, the House is always in cycle, right? Like, everybody says, oh, how can I get them on the record so I can run against them on this vote or that vote? And I think, the Senate is a place where you can develop those relationships across the aisle. And, you'll have big old public fights about policy, but at the end of the day, you can get to know each other better. And that's really important. I play on the congressional softball team. It's a weird thing to say, but it's a bipartisan women's congressional softball team. And I can't tell you how many relationships for future pieces of legislation to work on together have been formed at 7 o'clock in the morning with a bunch of old women playing softball.
So does Representative Crockett and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene play on that team? Oh, that should be like an MMA fight. That should be an MMA fight.
Oh my God.
We should get Dana White on that one.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'd put my money on Crockett.
Who's the best athlete on that team? Besides yourself.
No, I'm going to say this. Shelley Moore Capito, how old is she? I'm sorry, I shouldn't tell a woman's age, but like she's over 70. She's like a grandmother of whatever, 15. She plays third base. And I swear to you, I was playing first base last season. She would kill my hand every time she threw the ball.
Okay.
Like, I'm just like, oh my God, I want to be you when I'm that old.
Do they allow you guys to steal bases or anything?
No, we can't steal bases. It's kind of, but I played catcher in one of the, we play the press, by the way. So the women play on the same team. So we have to learn to be teammates.
One of these
Democrats,
games,
Republicans.
I want to go
it's just
watch
one game a year, but we practice like 40 times. But we play the press. And of course, the press is all like 25 years old. And, you know, the average age of Congress is like 140. So most of us are in our 50s. There's a few younger.
That's a great segue into my next question.
Oh, good. But I will tell you, I played catcher a couple years ago, and there's a great picture in like Politico with my ass up in the air as one of the members of the press slid into me. But I tagged her out, so it was fine.
As long as you got her out, that's all that matters.
That's it.
So you made reference to an age, which was a joke, 140 years old. But again, wouldn't you think that there's got to be new, younger blood in the Democratic Party in leadership?
Well, I came back from my last election and I ran for the top Dem on the Ag Committee from 15 people down. Mm-hmm. But the problem is if you just go by seniority, like people sit there for 40 years waiting for their turn to be in leadership. First of all, I think we need to start with term limits for committee chairs and ranking members in the Democratic Party. If you had, you knew I can only be in this position for 3 terms, in this leadership position, chair of a committee, more people would say, okay, I've done my time as chair, I'm retiring.
Plus, you might be motivated. If you know your time's limited, you're going to be motivated to get things done.
Get shit done, mentor other members. Mm-hmm. And the other problem we have is new members come in. I came in with the class of 2018, like 64 Democrats. We took the House majority back. And so many people are like, man, I'd have to sit here 40 years to get into leadership. And so when people don't see opportunity in front of them, they start leaving.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, you go in there with an attitude, to your point, where I know we do it every single day. And the culture is, look, we want to train the next generation. We want to make sure it's the organization and or the institution's better than we found it. Maybe that's some of the problem with the Democratic Party, because people have been there so long, been there, done that type of attitude. And don't you tell me what I should be doing. I've been here long enough. Sit down and be quiet and do what you're told. I think that was.
There's a little bit of that.
There was a lot of that. A lot of the constituents around this country, and I talk to them all the time because the majority of them are my members. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be told what they should do and not do. As a matter of fact, I said this before too. In many interviews that we do, it's like, look, when someone tells me what to do, my first instinct is do the opposite. It's just the nature of the personality.
Talk to my mother. That's exact. Talk to my wife, actually. She'll tell you that's exactly who I am.
Who calls the shots in that house?
Oh, damn.
Is it bipartisan?
She does, man.
Bipartisan?
I'm telling you, I call the shots everywhere else, but when I walk through the door, she calls the shots.
So what are the 4 boys like, knowing that their mom is a congressperson, potentially going to be U.S. Senator?
They are absolutely consumed with their own lives. They don't care.
No?
I mean, they're proud of their mom. They were there for the first election. And then, I've got 4 really different kids. A couple of them are kind of interested in politics. One of them, he considers himself more of an independent. And he's like, yeah, I'd vote for you, Mom. But the kids are... they're consumed with their own lives right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, as a parent, and, my kids are extremely important to me. I've got 2 boys, 24 and 21. I have a very, very strong mother who raised her 3 brothers in a housing project in Boston.
Wow.
And she's been a tremendous influence in our life. But she's been blessed with 2 others just like me. And we each have boys. We have 5 grandsons from the age of 25 to 20. No women, no aunts, no cousins. So
that's like us.
Yeah, I mean,
4 sons, 3
The impressive thing,
grandsons.
though, that toilet seat is always down.
Okay, well,
You know what I mean?
she did a lot better than I did.
Yeah,
I
she's
still
tough.
bitch every time the kids come home for dinner.
yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me?
I know, it's crazy.
I know.
So what's next for you? You've got a long hard fight in front of you.
Yeah.
What are you going to look to achieve? What is going to be a platform that's different from the platform you ran on as a congressperson?
I don't think the platform is different. It's the audience. I got to get all across Minnesota. My first trip up north was to Grand Rapids last week. I toured Mesabi Metallic, which would be the first mine in Minnesota in 50 years. It's
Mesabi's pretty Republican, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How was
no.
reception?
Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids?
It's way Republican.
Right.
The reception was really good. We had a couple hundred people turn out for a town hall up there just to kind of talk about things, and the town just not a lot of Democrats go up there and spend time in community there, and that's what I do. I spend time in community and not in just my Democratic bubble.
So you've had some people that were pretty influential in politics endorse your opponent.
Yeah.
Right? But you have some pretty significant union support as well.
I got in yesterday. I just,
I know.
I got in yesterday.
You think they can change their mind?
Yeah. Look, I think Minnesota hasn't had an open Senate seat in 20 years. And this morning I got up and we announced that Paul Wellstone, the late Paul Wellstone's son, Dave Wellstone, was endorsing me in this race, and I was honored by
Didn't
that.
Didn't your opponent hijack something from them? I mean, come on, let it all
Go
out.
to the website. Go to the website.
Stay
Go to the
tuned.
website.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. But she the 2 opponents have been in the race for a couple months at least, and they don't have any labor endorsements yet.
No,
I
think you've got one of the most significant labor endorsements. The Teamsters in Minnesota today, right?
I think I got the Teamsters today.
Right. So Flanagan is running on a platform of what? I'm the lieutenant governor. I'm Native American. What is it?
I haven't even been studying her platform. I do my thing. I try not to get caught up in the drama in Minnesota. I show up to folks anywhere and everywhere. There's political.
Where's Walt's going to be on this campaign?
You have to ask him.
Yeah, he's not
Ask
really
him.
talking to me these days. I think I referred to him after he said it. He made some reference on a news show that any union leader that didn't endorse our ticket is not courageous. And of course, my response was, you look like a creepy wrestling coach in junior high, but that's beside the point. But he did publicly say that if Flanagan got in the race, he wouldn't get in it.
Yeah.
So I would assume that's a half-ass endorsement.
No. It was. I'm just tell you what actually happened. Tina Smith announced she was retiring. Very soon after, same day, Peggy Flanagan said she was getting in. And I can't remember if it was before or after, but Tim Walz said he might run. And he took 2 weeks to decide whether he was going to run for the Senate seat or not. And he decided not to. Mm-hmm. So Tim, when he announced he wasn't running for the Senate, he actually said, I'm not going to endorse at this time. So,
and he gets a pension, right, from the teachers union?
I don't know what his retire. I think Tim's going to run again for governor of Minnesota. That's my sense of it. I mean, he said to folks in Minnesota he'll make a decision at the end of the session.
I think it's a little risky.
Well,
but again, I don't know Minnesota politics like you do, but we'll leave it to the experts.
We have no term limits in Minnesota.
Now, would you support term limits in Minnesota?
You know what? I support term limits right here. I said 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate is what I think we should be doing. Term limits for committee leadership.
How much more can a person tolerate?
Yeah, right. Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's treacherous.
What's
DC is treacherous.
Well, let me tell you, a lot of people here get all of their identity and their self-worth from being whatever title they are, senator, congresswoman. Like, this has just been their whole life, politics. Like, if I weren't this, that's not how I've ever thought about it. I mean, I just got here 6 years ago. Like, I mean, got here into politics 6 years ago.
Right.
I had a whole life before I got here.
Which probably gives you a completely different
different perspective. Totally.
Which is not a bad thing because...
Which it's about service.
Right.
Can I actually help working people in our country, in my district? Can I support keeping our communities safer, addressing this issue? Look, I had a whole life before. I'd have a whole life after. And I will someday. So... Right. I don't know. You do what you can do while you're here.
But I think what's important in public service is that you have to remember who you actually work for.
That's right.
And the decisions you need to be making should be consulted with the people that pay you the salary to represent them.
That's right.
And that's where I think if people just follow that simple principle, that a lot of the bullshit going on today would be eliminated.
I have never thought of this as my job. The 2nd District Representative. This job belongs to the people of Minnesota. They just decide who they're going to send to do it. And that is how I've thought about this every time I've run for re-election. It's not my job. People of Minnesota own this job, and they're going to send me to do it, or they're not.
So where can we find your website? Do you have any announcements you want to make? Do we have any infrastructure yet for this campaign?
Yeah.
Now's the time to plug it.
Oh, man. AngieCraig.com. You can see the full life story. What I did in Minnesota. Yeah, great launch video, man. Tells you about my life growing up in a trailer park, my mom. Tells me about my wife and I and our 4 sons. And, we had a little legal battle to adopt one of them when they were younger. This country's not always been as open as it is today.
That's good. That's
great.
So
tell you all about it. I flipped a Republican seat. It'd been in Republican hands for 68 of 72 years when I won it.
You had some tough, it was a tough run too. They threw everything at you, right?
Yeah. I've moved this district 30-something points since I started this 8 years ago. And I tell you what, you asked the best question here. It was, what did you learn? People never learn anything when they win because they're like, oh, I'm great, I won.
Or never admit anything when they lose.
Well, I did. And I think losing that first race was absolutely critical. And when I came back and ran again in 2018, I said, I'm just going to be me. And if people don't like it, okay. I'm just going to be me. I swear sometimes, so I swear sometimes. I'm just going to be me.
Well, that's all we can ask for. I wish you the best of luck in your campaign. And, this has been great. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Sean.
Out of your busy schedule, and you're welcome here anytime you want.
Hey, I'm honored to have Teamster support.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.